This video is brought to you by Wix. Howdy y'all, Jared here. We are stupid excited about Red Dead Redemption 2, so to celebrate it coming out, we wanted to break down numero uno and ask, what does it all mean? Just like its older brother Grand Theft Auto, Grand Theft Horse takes a satirical look at American culture, despite being set over 100 years in the past. But above all else, Red Dead Redemption is a commentary on the Wild West, our relationship to it, and if civilization was even worth all the trouble. So saddle up for this Wisecrack edition on the satire of Red Dead Redemption. And of course, spoilers ahead for a game that's 8 years old. First, a quick shout out to our channel sponsor Wix. In our last video, I told you about some cool community stuff we're doing with their website building platform. Now, we're happy to unveil our first site where you can vote on what we should cover in an upcoming episode of our movie podcast, Show Me the Meaning. Stick around till the end to check it out, and now, back to the show. To recap, Red Dead Redemption tells the story of John Marston, an OG cowboy trying to become a productive member of society until he gets blackmailed by the government, forcing him to hunt down his former gang members. Marston then moseys on down that lonesome trail into his past, seeking redemption. See what you did there, Rockstar? So he can get back to that simple farm life. So far, classic Western. The game even uses all the classic cliches: expansive vistas, quick-draw shootouts, literal cowboying, gambling, Mexican and Native Americans getting shot by a dude called John, and horse riding. Lots of horse riding. So with all this direct homage, where does the satire come in? Like GTA, much of Red Dead's satire comes from the game's huge cast of non-playable characters, who at first may seem like stock Western archetypes. There's Jenny, the good Christian girl in the opening scene.
Father, do you mean unless an innocent receives communion, they're destined to go to hell? That hardly seems fair.
Or Sam Odessa, who's on a journey to the promised land of California. Or Old Billy West, who asks you to collect flowers for his beloved wife. But whereas your traditional Western would use these tropes to tell wholesome tales of faith, hope, or love, Red Dead Redemption has other ideas. You leave Jenny to die of exposure out in the desert. Sam becomes a paranoid drunk, and then you find his body torn apart by vultures. Oh, and Billy's loving wife you collected all those flowers for, she's actually a rotting corpse.
Yes, you don't look a day over 30, ma'am.
Or you have a character like Luisa, an idealist with naive notions of a glorious revolution and a free Mexico, who gets unceremoniously shot dead in the middle of a mission, and then the man she claims to be engaged to can't even remember her name.
Who was she again?
Your peasant girl wife-to-be?
Oh, yes, of course. She will have a day named after her. Laura's Day.
Luisa.
What? Oh, yes, I knew Laura as well.
This puts RDR firmly in the camp of something we've talked about before, the post-Western. A kind of anti-Western that subverts the image of the Old West as it's classically depicted. The game pits kind old men and young maidens against the harsh realities of the lawless West, revealing how easily these idealists and romantics were crushed by the brutality of the Great Western expansion. Even the twisted idealism of the tyrannical Mexican leader Colonel Allende,
Now I fight to help them from themselves, to save them from themselves,
ends rather abruptly. But it's the characters who survive that provides the game's most scathing satire. The characters that survive tend to be your allies, and they, well, suck. Except Bonnie, she's fine. But the rest are largely selfish and unsympathetic, leaving us to wonder who we're supposed to be rooting for. Most of them won't even assist you until they've been assisted by you. Take Marshall Johnson. He has some pretty fluid ideas on how to police the town of Armadillo. In an early mission, helpfully called Political Realities in Armadillo, he reveals a conflict of interest, to put it lightly, between public safety and big business.
I got the railway, the people who pay my salary, trying to get me to turn a blind eye to them burned down settlements up there.
He also is more than happy to turn a blind eye to crime.
He's outside my jurisdiction.
That is, until he owes you a favor. Then there's Mr. Wes Dickens, the snake oil salesman, businessman, and
He's a harmless old fraud, the kind of man that built this country.
a man who actively discourages people from acting selflessly and uses Marston to win horse races and sell his tonic before lending a helping hand. Or Professor McDougal, the anthropologist from an Ivy League school, who also happens to be a racist cocaine addict whose theories on genealogy are constantly proven wrong.
It's remarkable. It completely refutes my last book.
With allies like these, we're forced to ask, who's the good guy? You've probably heard the phrase, history is written by the victors, and Red Dead Redemption seems to agree. The federal marshals like Johnson are ultimately the ones who tamed the Wild West. Professor McDougal, who believes the Native Americans to be barely human savages, survives to bring these stories back to civilization, where the decimation of native tribes continued for decades, while Wes Dickens, the entrepreneur and profiteer, lives to sell another bottle of elixir. These dickbags were the real champions of the Wild West. The idealists die, while the cunning shysters survive. Such is Rockstar's satire of the Old West. As a post-Western, Red Dead not only satirizes the Western genre, but the history of the West itself. The game takes place at the beginning of the 20th century, when the old lawless West was dying, killed off by industrialization and urban development. Federal law was growing to help police these newer states, and the Industrial Revolution was finally catching up with Western expansion. We like to think that this technological progress tamed the Wild West, but the game points out that it just brings its own flavor of violence. It gives you a railroad that you can take anywhere, but, as Marshall Johnson points out, the owners burn down people's houses. You're also given an early machine gun, twice, that you use to gun down entire armies. Not exactly your mythic cowboy shootouts, but equally, if not more, violent. But hey, new technology is awesome.
Civilization is a truly beautiful thing, Mr. Marston.
You end up with a pretty nuanced debate about the merits of civilization. Just as technology came to civilize the West, so did the government, which is similarly not given a flattering portrayal. For example, Abraham Reyes stages a coup against the debauched and cruel Colonel Allende in Mexico. Before we meet him, Reyes is described as a heroic revolutionary leader of great moral worth.
He doesn't care for their bourgeois, snobbery, or elitism.
When we do meet him, however, he's a lying, arrogant, selfish womanizer who isn't stirring up a revolution to free Mexico, but to get money and power with no intention of leading once it's attained.
Like any great leader, my brother, I will delegate.
The other representative of government is Edgar Ross. You know, the US official who has the backing of the US government so he can civilize the West. Well, he forces you to murder your former friends by stealing your family.
We need you to find Williamson, then head to Blackwater as quick as you can. We have reason to believe that Dutch Vanderlund is in the area.
Oh, your wife sends her regards.
And when you accomplish your goal, sends the entire army to your house to shoot you to pieces. He even says,
You see, me and Archer, we're the bad guys. We enforce the rules.
This is a world where the good guys call themselves bad guys, and the bad guys think they're good guys. So if the game is targeting the people who built the institutions that survive today, isn't that kinda bleak? Well, Rockstar may not be full of quite as many edgelords as it seems, as their conclusion on the merits of civilization is quite complex. So sure, John Marston and co argue that, while life as an outlaw is violent and often ugly, they are at least free. But the feds point out that the cowboys' violence that comes from defending their freedom kinda sucks for everyone else.
See, I'll tell you what the alternative is. It's not complicated. It's about one man and his gun versus another man. Sure. Civilization may be dull, but the alternative, Mr. Marston, is hell.
This bleak satire of society can be summed up in the chief antagonist of the game, Dutch Vanderlund. Dutch is the former leader of Marston's old gang and the man you're sent to kill, but he isn't quite a classic Western villain. We hear from Marston how Dutch raised him.
The leader of the gang taught me how to read, taught me how to see all that was good in the world. He was a great man in a way.
And whenever we meet Dutch, he's eloquent and honest. Violent, sure, but isn't everyone in this game? And then there's the fact that his new posse consists almost entirely of disenfranchised Native Americans who see Dutch as a savior. The only Native American character who talks to Marston and his allies is Nastus, who is patronized and insulted by Professor McDougal and then shot in the head as a traitor by his own people. Dutch is trying to stand against the march of the so-called civilization of the West that Marston's mission represents, having seen what it does to people and their communities. Before Dutch dies, he says,
"When I'm gone, they'll just find another monster. They have to. Because they have to justify their wages."
For Dutch, if you want an industrialized military with machine guns and motor cars, you need to justify that investment with an enemy to use it against. Which makes his character less an oblique satire and more of an on-the-nose commentary, seeing as it would only be 3 years later that World War I would break out. In Red Dead Redemption, not only is our nostalgic view of the Old West wrong, but so is the idea that the civilization that replaced it is somehow better. We're left with a world in which the crooked businessmen, selfish revolutionaries, morally bankrupt academics, and corrupt government officials are the ones laying the building blocks of the new world, while the selfless are forgotten. With this kind of pessimism running through the game, it's no wonder a key mantra throughout is,
Can't erase your past, Mr. Marston, but we can.
and that,
You can't erase the past, John. It won't make it go away.
and
The past is all that's real, my friend. It cannot be erased.
just as John can't escape his violent past, neither can America. Thanks for sticking around, guys. We're very excited to unveil the first of our mini sites that we designed using Wix. We're currently doing a full overhaul of our main website, and it's gonna be awesome, but we wanted to get some new features rolled out as soon as possible. I'm not the most savvy guy with computers, so I was really pleased with how robust and professional Wix's site building tools were. It's nice when you have an idea in your head on how something should look, and the technology you're using gives you the options to make it happen without the hassle. So whether you're a seasoned pro or a total noob like me, if you're thinking about building or upgrading a website, I encourage you to check out what you can do with Wix. And in the meantime, head over to our site linked in the description and let us know what you'd like us to cover in an upcoming episode of Show Me the Meaning. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. Peace.